When it comes to owning property, there are a lot of things to consider with estate planning. If you own your home, let's say it's your primary residence, it's important that you have a trust to be able to put your home into your trust to make sure that if something happened to you, whether you were to get sick or pass away, that your house would be distributed the way that you wanted it to be, avoiding a probate court. There are also other things to consider. Maybe you have a rental property or a vacation home. These are other properties that need to be cared for the same way. It can't just be the thought that, well, I think that the house is just going to go to my kids or it's going to go to my spouse, because it all depends on what title says. But by having an estate plan completing and having that second home, the vacation home, your primary residence in your trust, this ensures that it will avoid probate court and be distributed the way that you want it to be. When people consider transferring their property, they don't necessarily think about all of the tax implications that can happen as a result. Generally, we see people that over the course of their lifetime will transfer a deed back and forth between various family members, not understanding the repercussions that can happen where maybe reassessment of the property is going to occur. While working with an estate planning attorney, this will allow you to understand, if this is my goal of how I want my assets to be distributed, how I want my house to be given to my kids, then we can ensure that it is going to be given to them the way that you want, with the best strategy from a tax savings perspective as you can get. If you have multiple properties that you're considering doing an estate plan for and making sure that you have them in your trust, you may have some situations where maybe you have multiple children and you need to figure out the best way to distribute those assets to your kids. One way to do it is just by saying, okay, well, this kid gets this property, this kid gets this property, this kid gets this property. While that's one way to do it, it may not be equal that they would be getting the value for what that property is. And it really depends on what your wishes are, because ultimately this is your estate plan, right? These are your wishes. So that's one way to do it. Another way that I have seen it is where families will come in and they will say, you know what, we have 3 houses, we have 3 kids, we just want all of them to be equally entitled to every 3 of the houses. So they're going to share it together. While this may seem like the easiest thing to do, it is the easiest, but it may not be the most logistical going forward, because basically what you're doing is you're saying to your kids, okay, you guys are all now in business together. You own these 3 properties together, you have to work together, and depending on the family dynamics, they may not get along the best. And putting them in this situation may just cause more issues down the road that is going to be costly to your estate or to your kids. So it's important to work with an estate planning professional to make sure that whatever those wishes are, you can care for them. That's going to be a good solution for all those involved. If you are considering not doing an estate plan and just trying to get around doing an estate plan by maybe adding your kid to title, I want to go through 5 different reasons why this is a bad idea. The first one is that when you have title to your house in your own individual name and you just add your child onto title to avoid having to go through probate, the idea is that if something happens to me, it's just going to pass to this one child. Where people don't consider is the tax implications that can occur. So the first one is property tax assessment. Your property may be reassessed when you add your child onto your property. So if you have a really low tax basis, then that's going to increase your property taxes by adding your child onto your deed. The next one is what we call a step up in basis. So generally, somebody will receive a step up in basis when they inherit property by somebody passing away. However, if you just add your child onto title while you are still alive, they will not receive that step up in basis, which means that when you pass away and that property is now going to them because they're now on title, they will have to pay capital gains taxes from the time that you purchased that property until the time that they sold it. Whereas if they would have just inherited through your trust, then they would have got that step up in basis and they would have only had to pay capital gains taxes from the time that you passed away until the time that they sold it. So it can be a lot less from a tax perspective for them. The next one is creditors. If you add your child to your deed for your property, if they have any creditor issues, if they get sued, their house is your house, which means their creditors can now come after your house. And so there is no protection because you have now added another person that has the ability to have creditors come after your home. The fourth one is, what about siblings? If there's more than one child and you're just adding one child on title, this means that the other kids are not cared for. You want to assume that that one kid is going to do what's necessary to help take care of those other kids, but they are under no legal obligation to have to do anything because that house is legally theirs once you pass away. And the last one, and the worst to think about, is what happens if you have an argument with your kid? What happens if you're not getting along about something and you want to refinance your home, or you want to do a reverse mortgage on your home? Because they are now on title, they do not have to sign the deed allowing you to do what you want to do for your home. You are taking away all of that right with you and now passing it between you and your kid. So it's important to think about all of these different repercussions that can happen as a result of trying to avoid doing an estate plan and just adding your child on title.